What is up, Bears fans? It's a good time to be a Bears fan, and I'm
It is.
super excited to talk about this team and where it's currently at with my guy Herb Howard. And it's been a while since we've seen each other, but man, how have you been?
I've been good, man. Just enjoying a little bit of downtime. Trying to get back and take care of some things that I kind of neglect during football season, whether that be in my personal life or some other business stuff with my other pod or whatever. So just trying to get back on top of some of those things that kind of fall by the wayside just a little bit during football season. But it's kind of been like, how like you wake up a little bit earlier than your alarm, right?
Hmm.
And then you like try to go back to sleep, but it's not real sleep because your alarm finna go off. That's how it is waiting on the Bears with this hiring coach. You're like, okay, I can kind of cheer from the Bears, but I can't really chill because like any moment now I'm expecting them to come up with some big news and get us right back into the Bears news cycle. So it's kind of been like that.
No, I completely understand that. That's why yesterday caught me off guard. Where like Adam, first you had Josina Anderson kind of hint at
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay, there's maybe some rumblings about the Bears and Ben Johnson. So that kind of gets you like aware of what
Yeah.
maybe something might happen. But I like to be completely honest, I was not expecting Ben Johnson to be named the Chicago Bears head coach on Monday, 2 days after the Detroit Lions are eliminated from the playoffs. I thought maybe a little bit later in the week you get some kind of decision. But where were you, or what were you doing when that the announcement actually happened?
When it happened, I was taking a nap. When it happened, I was taking a nap, and then I got like 13 text messages back to back. You're like, bing, 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 bing. I was like, what? Okay. And I seen it was all about the Bears and Ben Johnson. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But on Saturday when the Lions lost, I tweeted after the game some poke at the Lions about them being the Lions and not actually winning the Super Bowl. And then my question at the end of it was, is Ben Johnson going to be the Bears head coach on Monday afternoon?
Mm.
And so, once I woke up, I was like, hey, he's the head coach on Monday afternoon. So I think it was really, really cool. I think, just like we were talking about, it's just cool to see the Bears do the obvious thing, right? So often we see the Bears try to outsmart everybody else and do some roundabout thing, whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Mark Trestman or Adam Shaheen, the second round tight end from Ashland College. Like it's they always try to do something where they think they've smarter than everybody else in the league, and for them to go out and get the guy who is clearly the top candidate in this coaching cycle was really, really cool. I know the Patriots went out and got Mike Vrabel, but that was different with their history. So that aside, Ben Johnson was clearly the top guy this coaching cycle, and the Bears went out and got him.
Yeah, that is I to me it was almost like, well, as this process was going on, you interviewed 17 different candidates for the head coaching position. It just felt like as time went on, like for whatever reason, there wasn't any like hard news saying like Ben Johnson was going to another organization. But I think just as Bears fans, you're almost like predetermined and thinking like, well, they're just not going to get the guy, like the top hot candidate. Like it's
Yeah.
just not possible. And so I felt like as this process was going on, like, I mean, Raiders fans were hot thinking like they got their guy, they were going to get
Yep.
him. And to see this news actually drop that the Bears were able to land their number one target, meet him at whatever the price range was for his contract, and to get somebody who has,
Sounding pretty steep too.
yeah, yeah, pretty steep. And, just with the history of this organization, that's usually not how they roll. But I think it just shows that this new regime is looking, or this regime now with Ben Johnson is looking to change how things have kind of operated in Chicago, and looking to actually be in the forefront of what it needs to be a competitive football team. And Ben Johnson, his offense, what he can do is definitely the step in the right direction to putting this team in a position where it quite frankly has never been. And that's exactly
Yep.
what they need to do with this hire.
Yeah, they get a chance to, you got Caleb Williams, and now you get to pair him with one of, if not the brightest young offensive mind in the league, and he's got the upward trajectory, and we've seen what he's done with that Lions offense since he's been their offensive coordinator, and so you got to be really, really excited about it. You really do. There's still some work to be done, obviously, in terms of this roster, getting the offensive line set, adding some pieces to the defense, and then there are going to be the questions about Ben Johnson as a head coach. We know what he is as a coordinator. We know what he is as a play caller. What is he? Who is he as a head coach in terms of setting the standard, in terms of setting the culture, holding guys accountable, addressing the team as a whole? And also as a game manager, what does he do on Sundays, right? Like we saw the Bears
Yeah.
struggle mightily with game management on Sundays or Thursdays or Mondays or whenever the heck they want to play. But what does he do on game day that allows the Bears to have some type of competitive advantage? And those are things we just won't find out until later on in the process. We'll start to see him put together his culture and how guys are responding to him as we go into the summer and things like that. But a lot of those things we won't find out until the fall comes. But for what we do know about him, you got to be really, really excited about this hire.
Yeah, and I think like for people you can have all these questions about Ben Johnson because there still are a lot of questions, but
Sure.
you can only base him off of what he has done. And what he's done is put together a hell of an offense that's innovative that even Tom Brady during the broadcast, like, did you just pitch the ball to David Montgomery, who then, pitched it in front to St. Brown or however it went? Like, that's stuff that look, it's a part of his identity.
Yep.
And it's great that he's going to add that to the Bears offense. And how much more creative can you get now that you have like a quarterback in Caleb Williams? But it's also with Ben Johnson. I mean, that you're going to be a team that's going to want to run the football. That's been proven in Detroit and how they do things. But you're also going to be a play action pass team that is able to hit the middle of the field on those deep dig routes. Like that was fundamental in the Detroit Lions offense throughout his 3 years there. So I can already see DJ Moore on these deep digs over the middle of the field, capitalizing on that. Like those are things that are going to be a part of the Bears offense now, Herb.
No, it's really refreshing. It's exciting, man, just to see, a guy that you think is going to be able to push the ball down the field, going to be able to scheme and then take advantage of mismatches. That's why you brought in all these pieces, and we didn't really see a lot of that last year in terms of scheming guys open, scheming guys into mismatches where you can use all of these weapons on your field to get a guy matched up on a linebacker, on a strong safety where you can take advantage of some of those things. And I think Ben Johnson's going to be able to do that. Now, I've been a supporter of DeAndre Swift. I was not among the contingent of people that was like, "Oh, DeAndre Swift is a problem. He's not a good back. We got to change." I still don't really believe that. However, after Ben Johnson's first year as coordinator, he was like, "Give me another running back." Yeah. And so I don't know what that means for DeAndre Swift, right? Like that. I think that was after his first year because he did a year in Philly, right, and then a year with us.
Yes, yeah, that's something. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and he's been the last 3 years he's been coordinator. So I think after his first year as a coordinator, he was like, "Yeah, give me another back." So I don't know what that means for DeAndre Swift, or maybe he feels differently about what he's seen from him on tape, or maybe it's just about upgrading and liking Demo and Jahmyr Gibbs more. But either way, I'll be interested to see how he feels about DeAndre Swift and how he goes about kind of deploying him into his game plan because he still got some guaranteed money on that contract. I think he was 3 for 24, so I think he had at least probably 16 of that guaranteed. So we'll see. We'll see. I like what DeAndre Swift brings. I'll be interested to see if Ben Johnson agrees.
Yeah, no, it'll definitely be interesting because I think maybe he looks at a guy like DeAndre Swift and the skill set and can get maximized more of what wasn't happening in this first year in Chicago because we've seen him flexed out and can be a guy that should capitalize on those linebackers or whatever it may be. So maybe he just has a better way of utilizing him, and maybe he's looking for a different guy instead of like a Roshan Johnson, or maybe we just don't know at this point. But I think that's what also creates, I would say it's like not hope, but like this opportunity for this offense because look, Ben Johnson's not going to be able to run exactly what he ran in Detroit. It's just not possible at this point in time.
No, not unless he's bringing that O-line with him.
Exactly.
or 4.2 speed like Jamison Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs. Like that's rare. Those are rare traits.
And so that's why Ben needs to create his own version of what he currently has, what they'll continue to add as they go through the draft process, free agency. So, and that's why it takes an innovative mind, somebody who is as creative as Ben has shown to be, that you can just make your own version of what's going to work with the current guys that you have. And I think that will be just a breath of fresh air for, the offensive players, his coaching staff, this team that you're not running. Yes, he has a system, but I have a feeling that Ben will run the system in the best way to what his talent is. And if you do that's how you maximize him.
That's the greatest test of any football coach to me, right? Of any coach. Like, how do I tailor my scheme, my system to what my players do best, right? Never mind, this is my system, whatever. What do these guys do best? What are they capable of doing? And then you tailor your scheme, your system, your weekly game plan around that. It'd be great if everybody could run, Mike Martz's greatest show on turf. But you got to have Marshall Faulk, and you got to have Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holden, Oz Hakeem, and Ricky Prohl, and Kurt Warner, and Orlando Pace. You got to have those pieces, and if you don't, you got to run something else. Mike Martz came here and he ran that thing with Earl Bennett and Devin Hester and Johnny Knox and Jamarcus Webb, and it's like you got Jay Keller on the field. Like, tell him I said fuck you trying to run that. Like, we can't do that. Okay, like so. You gotta be able to have the horses to run that thing. But I think that from everything I've heard about Ben Johnson, he has that type of flexibility. He has that type of humility to not, hold his ego in such esteem that says, well, we got to do exactly what I want to do. What do these guys do? What do they do best? And allow them, some input into those things and then lean into that. There's lots of ways to win football games, man. Jalen Hurts is over there throwing for 125 yards a game, and they still finna play to go to the Super Bowl. So, there's a lot of ways to do it. And as long as you tailor it around your players and what they do best, I think Ben Johnson will be just fine.
Yeah, I'm agreed completely with what you're saying there, Herb. The Bears, they've been releasing obviously some stuff since the news has become officially official.
Mm-hmm.
There was a little social media video of Ben Johnson walking into Halas Hall, and there's people on the second, balcony, kind of, applauding Ben Johnson. He's coming in, but there's just some quotes that I kind of wanted to go over and what he said. And it starts off with, "This is exactly where we wanted to be," and his family's there with him. And he did say, like, "This is going to be a challenge. I'm well aware of that. I know what this division is about, and this is exactly where we want to be." And he continues to go on by saying, "We're going to go after this thing. It's going to take all of us in this room." And then I think this is also a really important part, especially given what the Bears went through in 2024. It's going to take this locker room. It's nothing more important than that locker room and us serving that locker room and those players. All right. They need to understand that. They need to feel that from us every single day. And if we do that, the wins are going to come. The playoffs are going to come. All right. I think, again, we've heard from this locker room about players wanting to be held accountable. You want to enforce that discipline. And that's something that I think as we learn more about Ben Johnson, we'll see how when things don't go right, whether it's in practice, whether it's in a game, on a drive, whatever it may be, how does Ben Johnson make sure that those problems don't persist throughout the course of a season, throughout practice, whatever it may be. But just highlighting the importance of the locker room and making sure that that place is in a good spot. I think Ben Johnson kind of understands what it takes for a team to be good, because you look at that Detroit Lions locker room and everything that, made them such a great football team, even though they fell short in this year's playoffs. Like, that is something I think that teams can look at and want to be, and not be jealous of, but you're looking at like, yeah, that's how that team is.
That's the model
run. Yeah.
Yeah. I have been really since like last year. I've been real since last offseason. I've been real, just like tempering my expectations about Caleb and doing the same thing about Ben Johnson. I got to admit to you though, Nick, when they showed the video of him walking into Halas and the entire organizational staff being there and like applauding him and him addressing them, that kind of gives you some chills, man. That gives you that feeling of something anew, like something, a little bit of a rebirth, some reinvigoration, like, oh, this feels good, right? And even me, I gotta admit, like, yeah, that gets me a little excited. You know what I mean? That awakens that Bears fan in me that sometimes goes a little bit dormant as a Bears reporter. And that gives that brings that spark back. And so I'm excited about it, man. And you talk about, the importance of the locker room. I think two things. One, and I know we're going to get into some of this as we go through the conversation, the staff that he brings on, right? Can he bring in some experience, some guys who can help him, some guys he can lean on, some guys he can talk through things with as he goes through this process of being a first-time head coach? What type of staff can he assemble? What type of experience and veteran coaches can he add to that staff that is going to aid him as he grows throughout this process? And the second thing is, I'm expecting to see a version of Ryan Poles that we've never seen before. I expect him to continue to evolve and to blossom into a leader that we haven't seen him be yet. Not to say that he hasn't been one, but just a different version of that. I think that he should feel much more emboldened, much more empowered as the Bears GM now than he ever has before. I think he was handcuffed and handicapped from the day he got here when they said, yeah, you're the GM, pick one of those three coaches and then it'll be your decision. Like, no, right? I think this was his first time having the opportunity to go on a full out coaching search that he leads. And I think that it makes him feel empowered. I think we know there was a lot of noise outside of that building as the season went along and towards the end of it that says, hey, maybe we need to fire Ryan Poles and get somebody in here. Or if Ben Johnson, because he's the guy, if he doesn't want Ryan Poles, then get Ryan Poles the hell out of here. And for Ryan Poles to hear all that noise, continue to be supported and have votes of confidence come from Kevin Warren and from the McCaskies to say, no, you're our guy, you lead our football operations. And then for him to go through this process and still land the top candidate, I think we're going to see just this kind of renewed sense of confidence and leadership from Ryan Poles that says, hey, I can step in here when things aren't quite right. We heard him talk about, I saw some things going wrong last summer in training camp. Mm-hmm. Well, why didn't you say something, sir? Like, you're the leader of the football operations. I don't care if you see untied shoestrings on the field. You have the right to step in there and say, hey, fix that. You know what I mean? That's your role. That's who you are. So if that's what you want to do, go ahead. And I think having gone through this process with the complete support and backing of his boss has going to give him just this renewed sense of leadership and presence on this team.
Yeah, we should never see Ryan Poles be in the situation that he was at the end of the year press conference when Kevin Warren was beside him, where he didn't, you could just tell right then and there, that's my boss, Kevin Warren. Yep. Like that, just, you saw it in how he, again, when he wasn't answering questions, when he was answering questions, like that should be the last we see of Ryan Poles in that type of state. Like, he is the GM of this football team and he has every right to speak up whenever he feels he needs to speak up. And in the statement the Bears put out, this is from Kevin Warren saying this: I am grateful for the process that Ryan led, orchestrated, and executed. And I'm honored to welcome Ben, as well as his wife, Jessica, and their children to our Chicago Bears family. So, I mean, I think that, he said he was going to be the point person. Ryan Poles was. And it went through a process that I think, depending on who you talk to, was looked at as a laughingstock of like 17 people. Is this a little excessive? But they went through that process and landed with their guy. And I think that's ultimately what counts there.
He should be feeling all like Denzel in Training Day right now. Like, I'm the man in this piece.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right? He should be having that kind of feel right now. And then he's got to get to work because, I mean, the questions were warranted. Some of them, in my opinion, weren't. But some of the questions were warranted about, his process and how he chose to build this thing outside in terms of getting weapons before he got offensive line. He's got to be able to flip that around now. He also had to nail the head coaching search. He seems to have done that. And now you got to go get to work on the roster. So, he should be feeling good, but, now it's time to get to work. The spotlight will remain on Ryan Poles, in my estimation, through the acquisition period, like through the early summer, right? And even up until roster cuts, the spotlight will remain on him. And then towards the end of the summer, right on into the fall, then the light will shift back to Caleb and to Coach Johnson. But until then, the light is still on Ryan Poles.
Yeah, and this is only the first foundational piece, is getting that head coach in place. And now, and you alluded to it, like building out this staff. And before we kind of get into it, like it's been rumored Dennis Allen might be the guy at DC. But before we kind of get into that discussion, make sure to follow Herb. And if you're watching this, you can see his handle right there at Herb Howard 411 at It's the Bigs too, is where you can find all of his work. For myself, at Nicholas Moreano is where I'll post a lot of my work. And so make sure to follow us there. But Dennis Allen, I think this is a guy that, when we're talking about building a coaching staff for Ben Johnson, right, and wanting to get somebody that I think is going to help him out being a first-time head coach in Ben Johnson, I think Dennis Allen makes a lot of sense. Someone that has been a head coach before, taking over for the New Orleans Saints after Sean Payton leaves, but also in his time when, at the time, Oakland Raiders didn't go out, in the best way, but you still have that experience. So I just think that when you're looking at how Dennis Allen, if he does end up becoming the guy that the Bears end up acquiring, it's a guy that does run a 4-3 defense and will allow some of those, I think, just the foundational piece when you look at your ends and how the prototypical build you want, he'll fit that. So there's not too much of a turnover there. But a thing that, before we went live here, Herb, like I just shared with you, is like I was looking, like when you have a guy like Jalen Johnson, like I want you to maximize and utilize that guy any way that you can. Marshawn Lattimore was a cornerback that was linked with Dennis Allen there in New Orleans for a while, and then he ends up going to a different team. But they would ask Marshawn Lattimore, "Hey, go shadow the number one opposing wide receiver and go do your thing." And when I just think about the possibilities of maybe Dennis Allen saying, "Hey, Jalen, go follow Justin Jefferson around. Go follow St.
Yeah.
Brown around." Like
Yeah.
that gets me excited about what this Bears defense could bring that was never there with Eberflus and how they ran their defense, but just maximizing the most out of your top end players. That's all you ask. That's all you probably want for as a player. If Dennis Allen ends up becoming the DC, you're definitely going to see, I think, Jalen Johnson be utilized in ways that he hasn't been before.
Yeah, I think that's exciting, man. I think Jalen Johnson has that kind of ability. I know he has that kind of competitive nature to say, hey, put me on the best guy all day long and let's go at it. I talked to Jalen Johnson several times throughout the year, and we had conversations about him, just trying to stay engaged in the game and not become bored with the fact that so many offenses were going away from him, right? And just trying to find ways to impact the game in other ways. And so to say, hey, go shadow the guy we know they're going to try to target all day long and then take him out of the game, or at least make it difficult on him. And I got a ton of respect for Coach John Hoke, who's been the Bears secondary coach.
Yeah.
And I asked him one day, this might have been last year or something, about, why they don't choose to have Jalen shadow him. And he gave a really good detailed answer about, he not wanting to give any clues away to whether they're in zone or man, different things like that. And there's definitely a good answer, definitely reasonable. Mm-hmm. But when you have a player like Jalen Johnson, to me, I say don't play scared like that. Kind of dictate to the offense what they can do. And to me, you can still have him shadow the opposing team's number one receiver and still run some sort of shell around it, some sort of zone behind it. Just because they get an indicator that says, okay, well, we motion St. Brown across the formation and Jalen with him. Now everybody's in man. You can think that if you want. We don't have to be, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have to be if we implement those things. And so I'm excited to see, what Dennis Allen is able to do if he is indeed brought on as a DC. It is refreshing. It is good that you don't have to try to change the entire personnel to try to fit a different system, a different scheme, 3-4, whatever it may be. I think that also his experience is key, right? We talked about Ben Johnson being a first-time head coach. Having somebody who's been a head coach before that can help him in that process is going to be really, really good. And then also to have someone that you can totally trust with your defense. Say, hey, I need to spend all day with Caleb for a little while. Can you go over there and make sure that's right? And I don't recommend that Ben Johnson turn a blind eye to the defense. I want him to be head coach of the team. I want him to be able to get on the headset and say, hey, Dennis, turn up the pressure here, right? We want to blitz these guys right here, right? I want you to stay aggressive right here. I want him to be able to do those types of things, not just be like, well, he did whatever he wanted to do. I don't want him to be that guy, but I do want him to be I do feel good that he can spend as much time as he feels he needs with Caleb in an offense and be able to trust that Coach Allen is doing the right things with the defense.
I agree with what you're saying too. Like, you don't want to turn a blind eye to the defense, but I felt like even with like a guy like Matt Eberflus, he was almost, not that he was going out of his way, but he was trying to allocate his time in too many different places. And I just felt like there's just not enough opportunity.
Because he didn't trust his OC. That's what I'm saying. You got to trust him.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like when you do bring a guy in that does have experience, you could just trust him to handle what he's brought here to do. Run the defense, run that scheme, and call the defense the way he wants to call it. So I just feel like there's so many added benefits, especially for a first-time head coach. Like, Ben Johnson doesn't know what he doesn't know. And so as he's going through this, he'll learn about some things. He'll get some feedback from a guy like Dennis Allen if he does end up becoming that DC. And, he's got to also look at what he was with in Dan Campbell. And I'm sure there are things he would like to take from his experience there. Some things he would like to change. So I think that's what's going to be so intriguing about Ben Johnson as a head coach. And look, it's going to take time for us to truly get a feel of what he's like. But I don't know. I'm getting like you said, when you saw that video, it does get you riled up, excited about, like, man, I know this 2024 season's like coming to an end, but let's go 2025. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing what this team can actually do.
It helps you turn the page a little bit faster. And the entire process, man, it really makes me. And while we're talking about coaches, before I move on to my next thought,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, I wouldn't mind, and not only would I not mind, I would like to see Coach Hightower come back as a special teams coordinator. If there's anybody in the building or on the staff already to say who maybe they should retain, to me, it's Coach Hightower, special teams coordinator. I know we've heard Rizzi, who's got a ton of respect in the league, and that would be a good hire too. But if it's not going to be that, if you haven't already decided, hey, this is my guy and I really want him here, then I don't know that you can do any better than having Richard Hightower already in the building, familiar with the roster, familiar with the players, having had his hands on Cairo, having brought in uh, Taylor. What's your kid's name? Tory Taylor. Your guy. My bad. I see your Iowa thing back there. My bad. Having brought Tory Taylor along in his first year, I think you can do a lot worse, and probably not a lot better. If I want to phrase it even more emphatically, you couldn't do a lot better than Richard Hightower. So that would be something I would be interested in seeing how that goes. But moving on, I'm just impressed with the organization and how they've gone about this process and what it means for their appearance, their reputation around the league. The Bears have always, for a long time, outside of bringing in Khalil Mack or maybe the Jay Cutler trade, have always kind of been viewed around the league as it's kind of like, well, they aren't going to really go to the top. They're going to go, second tier or something else when they make these big decisions. And I think now to see them actually go out and get the guy in the coaching cycle, and from some of the reports I'm hearing, you're talking anywhere between $13 and $15 million, as many as 6 years on this contract that I'm hearing. So, like, they're really investing in this thing in a way that we haven't seen the Bears do that before. And I think that changes the perception that they have around the league. I think it also changes their perception in terms of the business that they're running. I think it's just one more thing that you're starting to see where, having Kevin Warren in place and having Ryan Poles and this just new structure in place, you're starting to see what that kind of looks like and how that kind of changes some things. We joked about how it changed, the food a little bit in the press box. But that was just a small indicator of things that could be changed, right? And so now you start to see what that looks like maybe in some of these big hiring decisions. We saw them fire a head coach for the first time in the middle of the season. So these are some of the things you're starting to see. Well, what is Kevin Warren doing? And I think if you're paying attention, you can kind of start to see what some of those things look like. And I think that perception will go a long way into adding into what he wants to do with other things, maybe the stadium, right? If I'm Arlington Heights, I'm looking at this thing like, wait a minute now. They got Caleb Williams, and now they've got Ben Johnson. That may be the hottest pairing in the league for the next 10 years. This may be must-see TV. This could be the bustling place to be for the next 10 years. Why wouldn't we want that here in our backyard? Why wouldn't we want that here 8, 9 times, every fall, every winter? So I think all of that kind of adds to your cachet of who and what this organization is, and kind of brings you some more added value.
I think, Herb, too, it changes his mom and pop organization that I think the Bears have been known to being
Welcome to the big
a
leagues.
business. Exactly. And that's one of the benefits of adding a businessman like Kevin Warren. So I think, like you were saying, the perception does change into a more mature with the time type of organization. And now what needs to come with that, obviously, is with the wins, the playoff appearances that Ben Johnson was talking about. But there's a lot of work to be done. But they are making the logical moves in the right direction to hopefully put them in a position to, capitalize on the current players that they have, the coach that they now have, and potentially maybe the stadium that they have if they start, putting a shovel into the ground, like Kevin Warren's been saying in 2025. Like, there's a lot going. Yeah, there's a lot going for the Bears right now. They just need to, it would be weird to see it all come together because, again, it all comes back to, this is still the Bears organization, but they have been doing some things just this past season, which I know has had many like gut-wrenching punches to it that are making it become something that, as you're looking from the outside looking in at the Bears, like, okay, they got the head coach, they got the young quarterback. You have now, I think, a guy in Ryan Poles that should be more empowered to do what he wants to do going into now his 4th year as a GM here. Like, there are things that you can look at and feel hopeful about that should, result to positive change for this Bears organization.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, man. Definitely great day for the Bears. Great day for Bears fans. Still a lot of work to do, in terms of player acquisition, and then obviously out on the field. But this is a very, very good day for the Bears and exciting times, truly.
Herb, before we kind of wrap this up, obviously we'll be at Halas Hall tomorrow for the introductory press conference of Ben Johnson. What do you want to hear, or is there anything that's on the top of your mind that you feel like needs to be addressed to this guy? Like, what are kind of your thoughts as you're thinking about like how Herb Howard's going to make his presence felt in front of the new Bears head coach?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just looking forward to meeting the guy, just kind of feeling his energy in the room, his presence. I don't think there's any way he doesn't win the press conference, if you will, tomorrow. Yeah. And so, I don't know that we're going to glean a whole lot of information or knowledge about him in this process tomorrow. But I am looking forward to certainly meeting him and just kind of seeing how he handles himself at the press conference as head coach of the Chicago Bears. I do want to talk to him a little bit about, his adaptability and, having the players that he had in Detroit and not quite having that roster yet here in Chicago and what that looks like for him. And so, if anything, I want to hear about that. His larger plan for, being the head coach of 53 and not just the OC of the offense. So those are a couple things I'll be interested in, but ultimately these are things that are going to be answered well into the spring, into the summer, and even as we go into the fall. So mostly I'm just excited to kind of, put eyes on him, meet him, see his presence, see his energy at the podium.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, like I almost want him to flat out say like, yeah, the offensive line matters. Like we need to get guys up here, like something along those lines, but also just to hear the development plan for a guy like Caleb Williams. Like we've heard some things of what he's seen so far from being on the opposite sideline, but seeing like what is the developmental plan for a guy like that to go into year 2 being the quarterback that a lot of people believe he could still be. So it'd be fascinating to hear what he says. And like I said, just hear him live in person answer questions. Like I've seen clips from press conferences, but as you and I both know, like there is something about being in the room, hearing it from the person, just kind of feeling him out and seeing like how he kind of operates in front of a crowd. Like this will be the biggest.
And Chicago's a different beast. It's going to be big.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be different. So he's going to feel that. And, it should be, start to what should hopefully become a fresh beginning for the Chicago Bears. But Herb, I just want to thank you, man. I know it was like short notice, like, hey, let's talk about this. There's a lot of news coming out. And, honestly, I knew you'd be up for it because you're always down to talk ball.
Always down to talk ball. Definitely always down to talk ball with you. We should do it more and more throughout the season. I know the fans have been asking you and I about it.
Yeah.
And so, if y'all rocking with the conversations that we have, and we'll continue to have them, y'all call it what you want. People was like, name it this, name it that. We don't know what we name it. We know that that's Nick and I'm Herb. Y'all call it whatever y'all want.
We'll figure out the name later, but yeah, we have to. You got to please the people because everyone's like Herb, Nick, podcast. Herb. Like I saw that tweet about like 6 times. Yeah. Like, I think they're on to something, and I'm sure people will enjoy us getting together and talking some Bears football. But yeah, there'll be plenty more on Wednesday after that introductory press conference. So make sure you're following Herb Howard at Herb Howard 411, and then myself at Nicholas Moreano. But until then, we'll see you next time.